there, I'm Freddie Patmore and today I'm joined by crochet designer Tracy Todhunter. Hello Tracy.
Hi there Freddie, thank you for having me.
So do I understand it correctly, you're going to tell us about Afghan crochet today, is that right?
That's right, Afghan crochet is a fascinating technique. It's a little bit like knitting and a little bit like crochet, but you can create some really gorgeous fabrics with some very simple techniques.
So what different equipment will we need for Afghan crochet that we'll need from regular crochet?
Well, you'll need a long straight shaft for your stitches. Sometimes that Tunisian crochet is called Afghan crochet. The two terms are used interchangeably. So you'll often see them called Afghan hooks in the shops, and you'll either need something with a long straight shaft and a stopper on the end such as this, or a cord like this one which allows you to hold lots of stitches at a time. And you can even now buy ones with an interchangeable cord which your knitting readers might be familiar with, which enables you to hold all the stitches across the cord.
So how do we get started? Where should we start?
Well, we're going to start with Tunisian simple stitch, and if you like I'll show you now.
Oh, wonderful, thank you.
We're going to begin with Tunisian simple stitch, which begins just as traditional crochet does, with a slip knot on the hook and make your chain. And then we're going to work into each chain across to complete the first row. So insert your hook into the first chain, bring the yarn over and take off the first stitch. Then work into the next chain, bring the yarn over, take off the stitch. So now we have 3 loops on our hook, and all we're going to do now is work across the chain to complete the first row. So now we've completed the first row. This is called the setup row, and all we're going to do now is work all of those stitches off the hook in what's called the return pass. So bring the yarn over the hook and take off the first stitch, and now we're going to take them off in pairs and work our way along the row until we get to the last stitch. So we bring the yarn over, take off 2 loops, bring the yarn over, take off 2 more, and we work our way across the row, working off 2 stitches at a time. Every row in Tunisian crochet always finishes with a return pass, and you'll notice that we haven't turned the work. We're always working with the right side facing us, so we're just working back and forth along the row. So we take off the last 2 stitches, and we're now left with 1 loop on the hook. And you can see here we've completed our first row of Tunisian crochet. Each of these vertical bars is where we're going to work our next row. So get yourself ready, and we're going to insert the hook into the first vertical bar. Not the one where our working loop is here, but the one next to it. So insert the hook, bring the yarn over, take off that loop, and you've now worked your first Tunisian simple stitch. So all we're going to do is work in the same way across to the end of the row. So insert your hook into the vertical bar, bring the yarn over and take off the stitch. And just complete the same process again across the row, and you can see the vertical bars beginning to form with the stitch. They become clearer as we work 2 or 3 rows. When you reach the end of the row, you'll see we've got 2 more stitches left to work here, the vertical bar here, and then the final stitch at the end. So we work into the vertical bar, bring the yarn over, take that stitch off, and then we're just going to work into the end of the row there, yarn over, take that stitch off. And it's a good rule here to just count your stitches and make sure you have the same number of stitches that you started with. And we're going to work our return pass in the same way as we did before. So yarn over, take off 1 stitch, yarn over, take off 2, and then just do that all the way along the row, taking off 2 at a time. We are at the end of the row. So you can see here the work is curling a little bit. That's normal, don't worry about that. Your crochet will do that with Tunisian, and it will just sort itself out when you block your work later. So when you press it flat at the end, that curling will disappear. So we're ready now to complete another row. So again, we're skipping that first vertical bar, working into the next bar, yarn over, take off the stitch, and then do exactly the same thing to the end of the row. So you can see now that we've completed 5 or 6 rows of the Tunisian simple stitch, you can see the vertical bars quite clearly now, and then you can just keep working as long as you want, really. You can see here I've made a larger swatch in the Tunisian simple stitch, and you can clearly see the vertical bars working across the swatch. How about making yourself a dishcloth? This one is just worked in double knitting cotton in Tunisian simple stitch, and then I've just worked a double crochet border around the outside to neaten the edges. And you could make that without a pattern. Simply work your chain, make your Tunisian crochet rows, finish it off with a double crochet border, and there you are, a lovely funky dishcloth for your kitchen worktop. Now we're going to work the knit stitch. So we're going to begin by bringing the hook under the vertical bar and then through the fabric to the back, under the horizontal bar at the top. Bring the yarn over and draw the hook through to the front. And then we're just going to do that exactly the same way into the next stitch. It can be a little bit tricky at first, but just take your time and practice, it will come. Now we're going to work across the row in the same way, under the vertical bar, through the fabric to the back, and bring the stitch through. So all we're going to do now is work a standard return pass back across to the beginning, ready to start our second row of Tunisian knit stitch. So we bring the yarn over the hook, take off 1 stitch, and then bring the yarn over and take off 2 at a time, all the way to the end of the row. We're just going to continue working the return pass to complete the row of Tunisian knit stitch. You can see here we are now with the first row completed. We're ready to start the next row. Once again, the hook goes through the bar, through the fabric to the back. Don't forget to miss that first vertical bar where you're working stitches. All the way through to the back. And we're just going to keep working across the row in the same way. And there we are, You can see the Tunisian knit stitches starting to form, and by the time you've completed your swatch, you can see why it's called Tunisian knit stitch, because it does look just like stocking stitch in knitting. If we turn it over and look at the back of the work, you can see they almost have the little bulbs like the back of stocking stitch, the reverse side of the stocking stitch.
So this Tunisian crochet fabric, Tracy, I mean this feels rather dense, would you agree?
Yes, it's one of the things you'll notice when you first start working Tunisian crochet, that it doesn't have quite so much drape as traditional crochet. And that's easy enough to fix. Just simply use a larger hook size than you normally would for your crochet, and you'll find that will create more drape.
Good advice. What other advice would you give to our viewers at home that are learning Tunisian crochet for the very first time?
Don't be afraid to have a go. There's no right or wrong way. We've made these videos to help you and to give you some guidelines to get started. But the best thing you can do is have a go for yourself, Freddie.